Hi there, thanks again for joining this YouTube channel where I talk about my sketchbooks over the past couple of years. Today is slightly different. I'll be talking through sketchbooks 1 to 8, but these are the smaller ones. So these are sort of A6 in size, and these ones are pretty much in my bag all the time. So they're dealing with people sketching mainly through train journeys through the UK and on my foreign trips as well. So don't forget to subscribe and leave some nice comments, and we'll be talking through these ones, as I say, right from the beginning, February 2015, right up to fairly recently, June 2022. So lots to see. Thanks again. Sketchbooks 1 to 8, and all of these, as you can see, are A6 in size. So these ones really cover the same sort of timeline as the larger Moleskine sketchbooks. So we'll start in order with sketchbook number 1. So this one, and these 8 sketchbooks were sort of always with me whenever I was travelling and UK based, as well as going abroad on various foreign trips. So I'll kind of scoot through this sort of fairly quickly because there are 8 sketchbooks. I noticed in sketchbook 4, which we'll come to eventually, I didn't manage to fill for whatever reason, but these are very much always in the pocket as they are with this kind of size, and you know, a couple of pens when I'm on a journey. I think sketchbooks 1 and 2, possibly 3, around about the time when I was doing a little bit of teaching in Derby University. So I would be catching the train very early in the morning from St Pancras in London up to Derby, and then teaching all day, and then in the evening getting the train back to London. So it was a long day. So you'd see a little self-portrait there. Don't know what happened with the nose. You would see passengers on the train either sort of asleep, because it was an early start for me, and it was an early start for a lot of other people, and you can sense that just by, you know, it's a very easy start to the day. They're sort of drinking their coffee, they're having their croissants, they're opening up their laptops, as you see so many people at that time of the morning when they're on a fairly long journey to somewhere else in the country. They're getting themselves settled in. And me too as well. I mean, I didn't really have much to do apart from just get the sketchbook out, or either listen to some music, or if I was heavily into a novel that I was reading, perhaps. But the sketchbook would always sort of come out at these moments if I was sat across from someone who was vaguely interesting. And sometimes you catch them if they were falling asleep, and sometimes you just kind of catch them it depends where you were sitting in the carriage. You'd sort of capture a little bit, a kind of an essence of them. So that's a good example of somebody either at the end of the day coming back to London, or going towards Derby in the East Midlands. So these early ones aren't dated. And they're Moleskine sketchbooks again, with thicker pages. And like I say, I just always had them with me. This was one of the first visits to Krakow, so I'm just sort of sat there having a beer. They had some sort of classic car festival thing going on, so I can't quite remember what make of car that was, but so I'm just capturing little sort of bits of places on my travels as well. That's Krakow again. This is back in London, girl I was seeing at the time. Some sort of open mic gig in a pub somewhere, I suspect. So they really are just little snippets. They're not, you know, I've only got a couple of pens with me. I'm not quite into the Posca phase at this point. Day trip to Brighton, the usual sort of people kind of sat outside a bar, restaurant near the beach. So really just getting to grips with these small sketchbooks and trying to do something vaguely interesting, really. They're not to be taken too seriously. They're just whenever I've got a spare moment and I see people that I'm kind of interested in, people sunbathing. As I say, I'll kind of quickly go through these ones, and anything of any particular interest pops out, I'll kind of discuss it with you. But these are mostly train journeys. There's a couple of moments where there's, you know, people sat in pubs. There's quite a lot of those situations where I'm waiting for my train at the end of the day after teaching in Derby, and I'll have a pint in a pub next to the station, and I'll just sort of capture people just relaxing after their day at work as well. And then you've got the obligatory sort of people on their phones constantly, people waiting for trains, train stations, that kind of thing. So then we move on to 2015, towards the end of 2016, and it's the same kind of thing. It's a moleskin sketchbook again. These are slightly thinner pages, so I've probably sort of packed this one with more. So I'm starting to get into really documenting with a little bit more detail with these ones. You know, just capturing random moments again, what kind of books I'm reading, people falling asleep. So it's the same sort of thing, but they're actually really nice, and it's funny looking back on these early books actually, and I do it occasionally now, but not as much with these train journeys. Whether these people that are sat opposite me, and if you've ever sat on a train in a carriage where you know you have the sort of table seat, and you're not that far away from someone, whether they're asleep or otherwise. So looking back through these early sketchbooks, it actually sort of occurred to me how sometimes how sort of brave I was just to get the pens out and start sketching these people. And 90% of the time they knew that I was sketching them, but they never said anything. This was, I remember this one. This guy, for pretty much the whole journey up to Derby, which takes about an hour and a half, he was really engrossed in whatever book he was reading, and he hardly ever moved from that position. So that's why this one was a little bit more detailed. So it's great how memories sort of pop back when you look through these books. And they're really nice ones to have as well. Like I said before, you're not taking it too seriously. You're just documenting, you know, you're not sort of, you're not getting really detailed, engrossed in these things. They're only really meant to be, I think this chap was falling asleep actually in the pub in Derby again. You're not really getting too engrossed in the detail and how things should look and the composition, and like the larger sketchbooks. Obviously with those ones I'm sat there for, you know, sometimes for about 2 or 3 hours. This person obviously had a heavy day, falling asleep on the table opposite. My friend Bob. These are going back quite a few years ago. So a lot of, yeah, it's sort of divided up in between pub scenes and train journeys, really. People sort of gazing out the window, or there's quite a few from smaller books. I didn't really mention them in previous talks, but I had a trip to America in 2017, no, the end of 2016, I think, which I documented a little bit here. This was the flight over. It was a bit of a road trip with 2 of my friends, Ed and Melissa, and we started in New Orleans. And we hired a car and drove for about 2,000 miles. It was a circular anyway. We went through Nashville and Memphis and ended up back. But this was the flight over, so this was the guy that was sat next to me. And this was the car that we did all those miles in. So I'm just sort of documenting these really briefly. And it's a shame I didn't do more actually once I was over there, but we were traveling so much and we were so tired a lot of the time from sort of going out and seeing different things and maybe drinking a little bit too much. This was the beach at Destin, Florida, back in New Orleans. This was a short trip with my brother and his friend to Berlin. So I'm taking them abroad with me by this point. So just documenting different things whenever I've got a spare moment. Because as I said in previous videos, you know, if you're traveling with other people, it's a little bit selfish sometimes, or I think it is, it depends who you travel with. Some people are good and some people just lose their sort of interest in what you're doing and want to go off to a different bar or a museum or, you know, walk around or do whatever when you want to sit there for a couple of hours. So these smaller sketchbooks were the perfect solution really. I'd take a couple of pens with me, put one in my pocket, and if we were sat outside having a beer somewhere, I would have time to sort of document some people or a particular place. This is a church in Derby. So there's not really any experimenting with Posca pens yet with these early sketchbooks. Again, sort of overlapping, drawing people falling asleep on trains. This is back in London, I think. A short trip home. This is the view from my old bedroom window, my mum's house. St Mary's Church in my hometown. That was Christmas 2016. Drawing the locals, people in the local shopping centre, having a coffee in the local Wetherspoons pub. So they were quite nice moments. And I think that is that for that one. Yeah, apologies again if I'm skimming through these, but it's there's quite a lot to get through. So again, you know, people sort of propping up at the bar and pubs. So I'm getting a little bit more confident now. I'm just sort of sat back and relaxed at the end of the day and teaching, and I'm filling a couple of pages before I get on the train, and then once I'm on the train I'm doing the same thing, and it's just a nice relaxing thing to do at the end of the day, capturing people again sort of falling asleep. Or with the sketches, you notice are getting a little bit more detailed. This was a good one. This guy kept sort of looking up and down, looking out the window, looking back down to his phone. So I was trying to capture his really cool glasses that he had on, and every time I thought he was going to stay in one spot, I'd put the pen to paper and then he'd move again. And actually it made for quite a funny sketch. You can see the sort of motion where his eyebrows and his glasses were. I did a little bit of teaching in Wolverhampton for a while as well, so there's sketches coming up, I think, in this one of, that was a nice one as well. I think he fell asleep for the whole train journey. So yeah, there's just the usual kind of people in pubs. Yeah, this was out the office window in Wolverhampton Wanderers state football stadium. More people. This is back in London on the South Bank. And again, I think I've said in previous talks, just sort of overlapping and really just documenting people on the page, not really too concerned with what they look like. throwaway sketches really. This was two people having coffee in a place just around the corner from London Bridge. Actually, I remember this, just for some reason wanting to fill the whole page. So I'm starting to date things a little bit now, just to remind myself of where I was. This guy was funny actually, he fell asleep on the train. So he kept sort of moving into different positions, trying to settle himself down for trying to catch a couple of minutes of sleep. So that was quite a nice one. So just really random compositions as well. Not always people's faces and expressions, but just, you know, this guy was quite a large guy, sat on a very small bar stool, and I thought it was quite humorous. Pub in Wolverhampton, back in my hometown. Again, sort of overlapping. The sketchbook has slightly thinner pages, so there's more sketches in here. I quite like the angle of this guy. Real sort of bear of a guy that was sat there. Just had his arm leaning on this other chair. I just thought it was a really nice composition. And then this guy that he was talking to in the background. Again, really layered, very busy. I was sat right at the end of the bar on a bar stool. People that kept coming up to the bar, people that were kind of huddled together, sat in different groups. Greenwich. Greenwich again. Yeah, this one's jam-packed with different things. This was my first, by myself, to Paris, my first visit to Paris in 2017. So even though I have a larger sketchbook that I've taught, Sketchbooks 1 and 2 in a previous video, but this is a smaller sketchbook that I took. So this was the first evening that I was there, and I found this bar, sat outside. I remember the guy that kept, the waiter that was serving me was quite impressed with this sketch. And this one actually, an old couple in a really nice restaurant, and they noticed me sketching them. So afterwards she approached me and wanted to look. She was quite intrigued by what I was sketching. And she was a lovely woman, and she actually bought a print of this. So I got her address and sent it over to her. Really nice old couple. Probably a couple that went to this restaurant at the same time, you know, every Wednesday or whatever. So there's quite a few sketches of Paris in this one, and people walking around. That was actually a nighttime sketch. So this is that's why it was all kind of the reason for all the dark pen work there. Sat outside a restaurant. That was my last night in Paris before I went home. Had an exhibition in Greenwich around about this time as well, a couple of months later. I sort of hired out this empty shop to put some paintings up. So this was my view every day. I was there most days to kind of look after it. This is Greenwich again, looking over to the O2 Arena, statue of Nelson there. Another view from that shop space. Tiny bit of Amsterdam. Not too many sketches of Amsterdam. Stopping and starting, that was probably the most complete one. Back home again. And this was Antwerp, holiday with my friend Dave. Rubin's house, or his gardens. Port, quite like that one. I think that's it for that one. Yeah, sketchbook 4, I think I mentioned at the beginning. For some reason I didn't really fill this one, but it was very random drawings. Either people on trains. This is the only sketch in this book of San Francisco. And then I left it for a long time, and then a day trip to Twycross Zoo with some of the Derby students. So I took the little sketchbook with me, and there were some of the students there looking at the animals. That was a really nice afternoon. That was the bus driver. Lots of people in the local pub. I think this must have been on the same day at the end of the day. And then that's kind of it. And then somebody falling asleep. Yeah. So for some reason I didn't fill that one. This one's really interesting. 2018, so the 21st of April. And I just had an idea in mind just to fill one sketchbook in a whole day. So started out at Borough Market and then finished at London Eye. So it's quite a walk. And I was just really experimenting with different pens. I mean, we're in full colour mode here now, so I'm pretty much what I do now. I'm blocking out little bits of colour, and I had some thick pens with me. So everything that you see on the page, all the pen work, all the pens I kind of took with me on the day. Started very early in the morning, Borough Market. It was probably on a Saturday, busy, and really just filling the page, not really too concerned with composition or what's going to happen. I didn't have any clue about what was going to happen. I just knew that I wanted to start from Borough Market and walk all the way down the Thames Path towards, past the Royal Festival Hall, and eventually end up at the London Eye, which normally if you're walking that probably takes about 40 minutes. And I was stopping off in different places. People were having drinks, people were sat outside having meals, and it was a really nice day. So some of the pages I'm not filling, and I'm not too concerned. I'm just and a lot of this I took a real random mixture of pens with me, so it's not all Posca pens that you would assume by this stage, because I'm in colour mode, full colour. So a lot of them are sort of old felt tip pens that are nearly running out, pencil crayons, all kinds of different media. So this is a moleskin book that's with slightly thicker pages. I think they're called Art Plus. And really just, close-ups of people's trainers and other people sat with their phones. Really not concerned at all with, sort of marker pens where it's kind of bled through from a previous page. Sort of quite interesting. I think I'm still in Borough Market by this stage. That's a nice page. So working through, some pages worked, but some pages didn't. But I'm not really too concerned with that. The object of this book was to fill it in a day. And I must admit, towards the end, I was getting quite tired. But it made for some really interesting results. When you really force yourself to engage in that kind of atmosphere and that for that sort of length of time. I think it was probably about 4 or 5 hours by the end of it, because I wasn't sketching constantly. I was finding, as I was walking up towards the London Eye, different spots to sort of nestle myself in between different crowds, or sat on a wall, or getting myself out of the way of people that were walking by. People relaxing on the grass. I think this was around about Tate Modern by this point. So I'm sort of halfway through my journey for the day. Again, just using different pro markers, different felt tip pens, really old cheap felt tip pens that you can buy a pack of for, £2 or something. And they work just as well sometimes as, really expensive pens. Doesn't matter. So these ones are around somebody's 30th birthday. The balloons. So capturing everything, a live band near Tate Modern, different crowds sort of sat relaxing, and then this was towards the London Eye. I think this is the end, yeah. One city, one sketchbook, one day. So that was the 21st of April 2018. So that was a good one. Never to be repeated. I think this was back home again. This is sketchbook 6. This one didn't, this was just for the whole of January, so this one didn't take too long either. Layering up different, mostly people's heads. So we're, I think, again, I've chatted about this before. I think in most places when it's January, it's just after Christmas. It's, you know, it's very cold. People sort of venture out with their hats and their scarves. This was in the Tate Modern. I think I was just sort of taking random journeys at this point. A lot of places indoors, just to get away from the cold. Downing Street, the police officers outside Downing Street, they were really nice actually. They wanted to see what I'd sketched after I'd finished, so we had a brief chat. Horse Guards Parade. Really nice guy called Hudson, a homeless guy who I got chatting to. Obviously I asked if it was okay if I sketched him. It's not something that I do very often because I don't want to impinge on someone's privacy, especially when they're going through difficult times. But he was a lovely guy, and he had a huge journal diary that he was making notes and writing things. And I showed him the sketch afterwards, and we chatted briefly, and I asked if he wanted any food or anything, but he was fine. So he was in a doorway just up near Trafalgar Square. Really nice guy. And this is in the National Gallery. People just chilling out on their phones. So just, you know, snippets of people before they move off. And I quite like that sometimes. Not capturing the whole person, it's not too important. Just getting the essence of someone. Sometimes what they're wearing, what kind of shoes, or, you know, what kind of bag or coat. This is outside Houses of Parliament. Sometimes where they sort of film the MPs outside. News interviews. The whole Brexit Euro thing was still alive and kicking at that point. We thought we might have had a chance for a referendum, but it never happened, unfortunately. Take Britain. People just sat relaxing. I think that was the bus journey on the way back. Yeah, some really nice ones in there. Just getting quite detailed with people that I'm drawing by this stage. And I'm getting used to the Posca pens. You can see by this stage these are the sort of preferred pens that I like to use. Buckingham Palace, that was quite a good one with composition. It just kind of happened by accident really, and these guys with the selfie sticks. House of Parliament again, protesters. Sketchbook 7. So I think these are in my local pub at the time. I think I mentioned it before that Skian's, the Irish pub just up the road from me when I lived in southeast London. A chap called Dougal, when he was growing his beard. I don't know if he still has it. South Bank. I had a day of teaching the MA students from Falmouth, online students. They came down for the day and we had a little drawing exercise. So that was part of what we did. We all met at the South Bank and had a lovely afternoon with them. I think there were probably about 20 in all, 20, possibly 25. National Gallery. People falling asleep in the National Gallery. This is Fez, Morocco, April 2019. I think this is the first day I arrived, so I'm just kind of hanging out, drinking endless glasses of coffee and mint tea. It's a local that I was sat next to for about 20 minutes, managed to capture him. He was in the same spot every day in this particular coffee bar that I like to go to. People making things. This guy as well, yeah. It's funny how it just brings back memories when you're looking at these books. I say it quite often, but I know photographs do as well, but there's just something about when you're sketching people, you can actually remember what these people were like. This old chap sort of looking at me briefly. He knew what I was doing, but he didn't really care too much. Endless coffee. I really did get into I didn't really used to drink much coffee before I went to Morocco, but I did afterwards. I think that was the last night. It was Hotel Fez that I discovered, and they had a bar in the sort of reception area. Absolutely beautiful hotel, and anyone can come in for drinks. So I just sat there with my sketchbook, documented this. This is back in London, I think. People sunbathing. Ed's back garden. I did a little test sketch because he was filming me for a short film. We used to make some films about me sketching, so this was a test sketch in his back garden. Borough Market. Fantastic place for sketching people. Real, just abundance of people there, especially at the weekend. This is in Bologna in Italy. So yeah, these books were really handy for these visits. So I'm in Italy by this point. I think this is the part one of my part two, I think, of my grand tour. Again, as I've mentioned, or will mention in future sketchbook talks. So again, just sort of random people, tourists, holiday makers in foreign countries. Really nice to document that. This is in Venice. I remember these people well, just sat on the canal side, the water's edge. They were told to move along, actually, because they were in people's way. So I just managed to document them in the heat before they were told to move on. And the gondolas. Very hard to capture, but I'm glad I did. St. Mark's Square, feeding the pigeons. Whether you're meant to or not, I'm not sure. Back in London, I think this is Euston Station. Some guy sunbathing with all his clothes on. I think this is back to Borough Market again. Day trip to Brighton, I remember this. Yeah, waiting on a friend in a bar, and not a very nice day. Normally have a lot of good luck when I go to Brighton for the day to meet friends. It's normally lovely weather, but this one was horrible. A good day nonetheless, but and then the last sketchbook, sketchbook 8. So this kind of brings us right up to date to June. And it's a funny one, this one, because I actually started this book actually in 2020. So this one took, you know, over 2 years to fill. It's one that I'd kind of largely forgotten about. So it's quite interesting to look through this one, because not just because of the detail and the Posca pens and what I'm capturing, but the sort of moment in time. So people aren't wearing masks. This is January 2020, so we're just maybe a month or so in the UK at least off a total lockdown, and people only going out when they absolutely need to, and wearing face masks obviously. So I'm still doing the visits to Derby, I'm still teaching, so you can see me capturing people there. And I think this is the first time I've seen this Japanese guy, possibly a student, wearing a face mask. So that's the first time I'm documenting it. And here as well. So we knew something horrible was coming, but and so it did. So these are just random things. This is when we're in the first lockdown, so I'm just drawing objects, little objects that I've collected, really just to pass the time, you know, houseplants, things like that. Thought it would make an interesting little GIF, or sort of like a short film to post. And then back to some kind of normality. My friend Jim, we're up on Telegraph Hill in southeast London. And then a couple of preparatory sketches for something I did, a project that I did in Chinatown. I did a one-day sketch event where I sketched people and places, because people were coming back out by that point. And this was about a year later. And the idea was for me to give away the sketch to the people that I had been sketching, and it went down really well. Actually, it was a very strange experience to for me to be drawing so quickly, and B, to kind of gauge the reaction of the people that I'd actually been sketching. But it actually really worked, and it was a very long day. I think I only did about 6, 7, possibly 8 sketches, very quick ones. And it was quite exhausting, but it was a really fulfilling afternoon. But these were the preparatory sketches afterwards. I went a couple of days before the event just to acclimatise myself. Had a bit of lunch there with a beer, the obligatory beer. Yeah, Plum Valley restaurant in Chinatown. And these ones were fairly recent in Ramsgate. These were only a couple of months ago, so to finish the sketchbook that spanned 2 years. So obviously we're fully out of all the lockdowns, and I'm really trying to capture people as quickly as I can, getting back into that routine again, houseplant in my new flat. And only using a couple of colours for different combinations. Very random, just drawing over the top of other people, not really giving too much thought to it, just kind of capturing the essence of people that I like to do in these smaller books. Just a little bit of colour, town square, people walking past. Using some really thick pens, really quick sketches, kind of setting myself a target of filling at least 3 or 4 pages for every afternoon. Dynamic colours, dynamic composition, trying something a little bit fresh, a little bit different. And I think we're coming to the end of this one as well. People sunbathing on the beach, that was quite a nice one. they sat there in the same position for a very long time, so that was a great, enabled me to sort of get a little bit more detail than I would normally go for. So those were the 8 sketchbooks, the smaller ones, A6 or moleskin. So they covered 2015 right up to sort of present day. So I hope you enjoyed that little walkthrough. I certainly did. It's really nice to look back on all of these as a collection. You know, ones that I'm kind of looking back on over 7 years, and the smaller sketchbooks that you really carry around with you all the time, and you just document, even if you're filling a couple of pages, you're drawing people or you're drawing places, and you're not too fussed about the detail, so they're really nice to look back through. So thanks again for watching this particular film, and check out more in the future. Thanks very much.